Hi everyone, it's Nick. Welcome back to my channel. Okay, today we're going to be talking about Temu, which is the e-commerce, fast decor, fast fashion, fast everything online Chinese retailer that is taking over the world. And we're going to be talking about it in this video. I'm going to be giving you some facts about what Temu is. So if you don't know, stay tuned. I will be explaining a little bit about Temu, providing some secondary research that I have. I say secondary, meaning the media has already reported on everything. So don't sue me, Temu, if you're watching this. I'm going to source everything I can in the description. Don't sue me. I'm not worth your time, is basically what I'm saying. I don't have any money, trust me. And I'm also going to be talking about the effect that Temu has had on influencer culture, because I think being a content creator here that does do brand deals and has been approached by Temu approximately 82,000 times, I think I have a lot to say on that because I'm in a unique position to weigh in on that a little bit. And then I'm gonna be talking about sort of the challenges that Temu has, maybe some counterpoints about to defend Temu for a little bit, and then provide my opinion. So let's get into it. Let's talk all about Temu. Okay, so first, what is Temu? Okay, so Temu is a Chinese company. It is owned by a Chinese company, but it is technically headquartered in Boston, which, sure, just like a lot of places are headquartered in the Cayman Islands. You know what I mean? Like, it's like headquartered in Boston, but like, is it really? It's a Chinese company, let's be honest. It is an e-commerce company. It is an e-commerce marketplace. It is oftentimes compared with Shein. If you have heard of Shine, Shein, whatever it's called, they are mostly fashion, while Temu does do fashion, but it also does home decor and lots of other pieces. And that's why I want to touch on this video, because I talk about interior design and home decor, and Temu is sort of a part of that story, as well as just fast decor in general. So it's oftentimes compared. Shein is actually, they have relationships directly with manufacturers, so they will be more like H&M or like Zara, as opposed to Temu, which is more like Amazon. It's a marketplace. And that sort of does matter, because I think that Temu tends to hide behind the fact that it's a marketplace a little bit as a way to protect itself, saying we're not responsible for what's on our platform, which is sort of, can I just say, really annoying that a lot of these tech companies are doing now, is just not taking any responsibility, because, you know, looking at you, Meta, and maybe even Google, or maybe even YouTube, hi, right? We don't take responsibility for the stuff that's actually on our platform, because we're just a platform. So like, we can't be held responsible, even though we make billions of dollars. So whatever, that's a little bit of my own little side story there. So I feel like with some of the issues we're gonna be talking about, Temu tends to hide around the fact that they're a marketplace, so therefore not responsible for what people are doing on their platform. It's really also interesting to note that one of the loopholes we're gonna be talking about that Temu sort of uses, and Shein does as well, is this idea that when goods are headed directly into the United States, imported in, if they're under $800, they actually don't necessarily need to be sort of inspected and paying duties and customs. So that is really interesting, and I'm gonna touch on that a little bit more in depth in a second here, because it means that they don't have to pay duties that even the likes of like a Walmart or a regular sort of US-based retailer would have to do, where typically the model is taking these large shipments from Asia, bringing them in to the United States, paying duties and customs and all those different things, and inspections and all those sorts of things, and then shipping it to their warehouses and distributing to the retail stores. That's the typical model. But Temu and Shein ship directly from China to you. So yes, it takes a little bit longer to get to you, but no matter where you live in the United States, they will offer free shipping and they will send directly from China to you. Therefore, that package being under the $800 means it doesn't have to be inspected. It also means that it doesn't have to pay the same duties and customs as the other sort of typical retailers would, which is interesting. It also means that this has blown up and it's been absolutely crazy. So it's estimated that 30% of all packages under this $800 threshold entering the United States are from these two companies, from Shein and Temu. That's mind-blowing to me that a third of the packages under $800 entering the country are coming from these same two retailers. That gives you an idea of the size and scale of these companies, and Temu, again, apparently is bigger than Shein. That's crazy to me. And that 30% works out to be about 600,000 packages entering the United States daily, which is insane. And Temu sells everything that you would maybe expect on Amazon or any sort of retailer. It's a lot of, it feels a little wish.com for me, I'm not gonna lie, but it sells a lot of maybe perhaps useful things, little plastic organizers, things that are insanely cheap. To the point where you kind of go, something's got to give here. How are you able to ship this from China to the United States, and you're shipping something with free shipping and it's literally $6. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and we're gonna talk about why. Yeah, this just gives you the idea, and they sell everything. They sell everything from some decor pieces to name-ish brand products to all sorts of different goods that are available on Temu. Shein, again, is really, we're talking clothing there. Temu, though, is the works, and a lot of it is the home stuff that I talk about here on my channel. Okay, so next, that's Temu. Let's talk about the influencer effect, because The influencers and content creators, myself included, hi there Temu, you email me all the time, so probably not anymore though. Content creators and influencers have had a massive effect on these two companies specifically, and I will say, what can I say? Don't want to get sued. I will say I get approached by Temu all the time, and it is understood in the industry because Temu probably pays quite above market, or maybe pays quite well, let's say that. It's a really important source of revenue for a lot of creators, and I think it's important not to forget that. So I will say that at the end of the day, it's the responsibility of every influencer and every creator to stand behind the products, to see some value in what they're trying to create, to be comfortable for themselves, to be comfortable with whatever they're promoting. And that can be really tough because some things are on the line and you're kind of like, well, I don't necessarily love it, but I could see my audience really loving it. So maybe that makes a little bit more sense for me. Some people are really strict with this, some people are not. And again, you as a creator, as an influencer, you need to stand behind the stuff that you promote. You can't lose the trust of your audience. That's the whole reason why you're here at the end of the day. But I will add, as a person who does this for a living, for a hot second, forgive me, bear with me, we don't necessarily always have the opportunities that you might think that we would. It's not like every brand is throwing stuff at you 24/7, and bills have to get paid. You have editors, you have managers, agents, whatever. You actually have people behind the scenes, new equipment, whatever, right? You have stuff that you need to pay for. It's a business at the end of the day, and so you do need to take a look at what you feel comfortable with, and that's not always easy. I'd also like to point out, it is a privilege to say no. I'm gonna say that again, it's a privilege to say no, and I think that's something that I always try to remember when I look at what other content creators are choosing to promote. Like as an example, let's say you got two influencers. They're both like 35-year-old women, okay? Let's just say. Influencer one, her husband is an anesthesiologist who makes like $500,000 a year. Okay, well, she maybe doesn't have to take a brand deal because she's privileged enough to be able to say no. And let's say, meanwhile, you've got another single mom who has 3 kids and she's got to pay rent at the end of the month. Okay, well, she might be in a position where she has to take a brand deal that she's maybe not 1,000% comfortable with, but it's just sort of the way that it is. And I would just say that although both influencers should be held accountable for what they do, let's also not forget there's people behind this and they have different circumstances that are leading them to sort of take the deals that they have. And I know that's gonna come across to some of you as I'm defending people for endorsing really crappy things. Well, you know, that's your interpretation. I'm just saying, I'm trying to have empathy for different perspectives around this issue. Okay, so let's talk about Temu and some of the problems that I see. And again, a lot of this is based on secondary research, please don't sue me. First of all, let's talk about the environmental impact, right? Which is just that both in terms of shipping and the effects necessarily of sort of shipping 600,000 packages into the United States every single day, as opposed to potentially what could be a more efficient way of moving goods, but also really just the nature of incredibly cheap products, especially in the area of decor. So it's one thing to have sort of, there's a conversation around single-use plastics, for example, but then even just cheap items that are clearly designed to break, or even products that are decor pieces that are not designed to last. These are items that are incredibly trendy. These are items that will pop up, be popular for about 5 minutes, and then they will be disposed of and end up in landfills. I think it's really important that we sort of address that. Now, I'm not saying all of Temu's goods are that way. There can be some that are actually quality pieces. I don't really know. I've honestly never purchased from them, full disclosure, but I would still say that there could be some quality pieces there, but a lot of these pieces feel very cheaply made and designed to be disposable. And so I think there is an important conversation to be having around the environmental cost, because really what we're doing is we're externalizing the cost. So what I mean by that is you might pay $4 for something that might be $20 at sort of a regular department store or something. You might pay $4 for it on Temu, but there are significant environmental costs and maybe even labor costs I'm gonna talk about in a second that you're not purchasing. Do you know what I mean? Like you're not paying the cost for that. Others are. That's designed right into the system. So Temu is able to offer those prices partly because of the cost that it might take to actually add additional layers of cost to say, you know, care about the environment and building things that are actually going to last for people. That type of cost isn't born actually into the price that you're paying when you shop at Temu. So for some of their products, maybe some of them are great. I'm not saying they're necessarily all bad. I am just saying though that there are some pieces that are so obviously cheap that there must be, in my opinion, some things going on specifically around areas like the environment that are making it that cheap. If it looks too good to be true, it probably is. It's also estimated that fast fashion alone counts for 10% of all greenhouse gas emissions, which is quite an insane number to be honest, and that is just on fast fashion. So I think that fast fashion has been in the conversation for a long time. I think fast decor has not had as much time to be discussed, and it really should be. And I think especially with the pandemic, where people started spending a lot more time in their homes, they started showing off their homes a lot more. Part of the reason I have a job, let's be honest, but I think what it also did is encourage people to change their homes quickly, and it gets featured quickly, and kind of like the way that fashion constantly turns around, the trends in interior design is also moving a lot quicker than they ever were in the past. People are choosing to buy less sort of timeless classic pieces and more trendy pieces that they've seen on TikTok that are obviously disposable, and they're designed that way, and they can be fun for 5 minutes, but inevitably people get sick of them, they chuck them out and they buy new. And that's really, I think, a lot of these fast decor retailers, which I would include Temu in. They're quite problematic in that way because they're encouraging that behavior. It doesn't let the people that are playing a part in those trends off the hook completely, but it does mean that they are enabling and contributing sort of to that conversation. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about here is around forced labor. Now, Temu does have a code of conduct on their website. They do have some information there, but other sources, specifically the US government, is questioning that Temu is necessarily following all of the legislation around forced labor. And specifically looking in parts of China where there is allegedly forced labor that is being conducted, and Temu, being a marketplace, sort of is able to have whoever perhaps is on their website, and that can be a challenge for them because those inspections aren't necessarily happening. Especially that kind of $800 limit that I talked about earlier, where packages entering the United States that are under that dollar amount don't necessarily have to undergo the same inspection as they would if they went through the traditional supply chain. That's concerning because that means that those inspections potentially are not being done. Here's the documentation from the US government. I'm gonna link it all down below, but they have said that American consumers should know that there is an extremely high risk that Temu's supply chains are contaminated with forced labor, which is from the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party said in this report. It said the company requires suppliers to agree to a code of conduct, but relies on third parties to flag problems, describing the process as a dubious system. Temu does not have any system to ensure compliance with the UFLPA. This all but guarantees that shipments from Temu containing products made with forced labor are entering the United States on a regular basis, it said. So does this mean that there is definitely going to be forced labor when dealing with goods that are arriving from Temu? I would say that you're gonna have to make your own decision. Let's just say that. But I would say there are definitely concerns that have been flagged, and those concerns are a problem and need to be addressed. And I think that a marketplace system where you are relying on small sort of independent players to jump in and choose their own sort of path in terms of how they want to conduct themselves. Yes, you might have a code of conduct, but it's important that when you're dealing with this scale and size in a year, this is a company that's been around for a year, okay, people? Have they necessarily done the thorough due diligence with every single supplier that is on their website? Maybe, that is up for you to decide. Or is this a little bit of a gray area that is intentionally gray in order to skirt around some legislation that is really, really important in order to ensure that there are proper labor practices being conducted through these different suppliers? That's enough for me to not want to personally jump in and put my endorsement behind Temu. Personally. Another interesting one that I think is worth mentioning is also copyright infringement. There have been reports, Wired Magazine did a report where they talked about how Amazon sellers, so this is people that are operating on Amazon and have, you know, their own suppliers and whatever that they're selling on Amazon's platform, which we'll discuss Amazon in a second. And these people have reported that their descriptions, products, photos, whatever, have been completely taken off of Amazon and ripped off their entire store and put them over on Temu and selling them at a cheaper price. So that's an issue, as well as, I mean, I've heard people that Temu has said that they have tried, or they are trying to crack down on copyrighted or trademarked goods and items to appear on their website. I think that that's interesting only because it took me about 2.5 minutes to find some goods that were obvious knockoffs of name brand products. So, you know, if you are a small retailer that is trying to make a go, or even a large retailer that is trying to protect your trademark or, you know, whatever your copyright, whatever you've got going on, remember, it doesn't take long to be able to find the knockoffs over on Temu's website. So I personally, just through my own clicking through the website, again, 2.5 minutes, doesn't take long for you to find some knockoffs on Temu. So I'm not really sure that this is something that they're closely monitoring. Let's say that. Another challenge that a lot of people find that is gonna lead me into my next section too is around privacy. So it is really important that although the company says that they are headquartered in Boston, again, it doesn't take long for you to follow up the chain and realize that this is very much a Chinese-owned company. So some people have concerns around privacy. Obviously, the whole TikTok versus Instagram, Meta, YouTube, whatever conversation has been around for a while, and there are issues, or the US government especially has been very vocal about flagging issues around privacy, of giving your information of what you're buying, what you're shopping, whatever, to a Chinese website. Some of that could be overblown, and we're gonna get to that in a second, but that's up to you. That, for some people, is a massive concern. Some people don't even shop online because they don't like to give their credit card into a website, which, fine. But you know, that is a concern, that is something just to be aware of, is that people are flagging privacy as a concern, specifically because this is a Chinese-owned company. That's not to say that Meta is not selling your data as well. I mean, hello, obviously, but something to be aware of. Okay, but I will say, in defense of Temu for a second, sometimes I think it is also really important to acknowledge that some of the charges against Temu can almost feel a little bit xenophobic and can, in my personal opinion, sort of have this idea, American company good, Chinese company bad. And again, some of that is wrapped just into the politics of it all and the privacy issues, and I totally get that. But also, you know, it can feel xenophobic, borderline racist sometimes, to be able to just go after this company specifically, when I think we should also not forget that not all American companies are good actors. Like I mentioned around privacy, Meta sells your data, let's be honest, YouTube sells your data, Google sells your data, like that's just how this works. They sell it to advertisers. That's a whole business model, right? That's the whole show. Let's not forget that, and I think it's really important that yes, there are some real legitimate concerns. It does not let Temu off the hook. There are all those concerns that I just talked about, super valid, but also there's concerns around fast decor when it comes to other Western companies as well, right? I noticed that when I did a video on H&M or Zara, I had so many comments from people saying, don't support them, Nick. Fast fashion is awful. It's killing the world, blah, 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 blah. Totally. But I would actually argue that a lot of the pieces that I talk about at H&M and Zara are actually high quality pieces that you can have for years and years. While IKEA, interestingly enough, I don't know if it's got that Swedish halo, they gotta be lovely people. They wouldn't ever do anything wrong. IKEA tends to get off the hook a lot, and I don't get a lot of comments saying that IKEA is evil. And I'm not saying they are either, but I am saying that I've bought some IKEA pieces that are not particularly going to last me forever and ever and ever, whether they will break and actually fall apart, or whether they're just gonna chip and look really bad in 6 months or so. And then I've had some pieces from H&M and Zara that are like real marble or real walnut, or they're actually really good quality pieces. Now, on the fashion side, that's gonna fall apart in like 30 seconds as soon as you leave the store and wear it once, right? So I get you there, but a lot of the decor pieces are actually really a little bit higher end. I would say that H&M and Zara are not the same fast decor players as Temu or even IKEA, to be honest with you, or Walmart or Target. So, you know, I think that's important to also consider, is that Western companies aren't completely off the hook either. And it's important that we hold everybody accountable for things like forced labor, caring about the environment, some of the basics that we demand of these companies. And I think that's really important to do. So there is some xenophobia sort of wrapped into this conversation. And obviously there's like politics way above my pay grade around the US versus China that I'm Canadian. I'm not here to sit and chat about that, but that's clearly also involved in this conversation. And I think that, you know, it's important to kind of be critical of all sources, even me. You should be critical of me. You should be critical of your governments. You should be critical of the Chinese government. You should be critical of Temu. We should all think critically around these issues and move forward from there. That's what I'm saying. Okay, so let's now wrap this up. This is a documentary. I didn't realize this was a Temu documentary here. You know, let's talk about my thoughts. I'm gonna give you some final thoughts on where I'm at. So as an influencer or a content creator, whatever the heck my job is, I don't know, I sit here in my room and I talk about interior design. Who knows what I do? This is a brand that I didn't feel comfortable promoting. And they have approached me many times. They probably will not anymore. Or they won't watch this video and therefore they will still email me. Hi Temu, that's possible. But it's not a brand that I felt comfortable endorsing. But I also don't necessarily slam influencers that did work with them, because every influencer, every content creator has to do right by themselves. They're in different circumstances, like I said. I don't feel comfortable promoting them. I also don't really feel comfortable shopping there. And that's often because I have the means to be able to like not shop there. And I think that's a really important point that I want to finish off on. I think that the real challenge here, I don't get political. I'm not here to get political. I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican. As I said, I'm Canadian. Do not get me involved in your politics, okay? This I do not want in that comment section. But in my personal opinion, the big problem is wage inequality. That's really the root of this. Bear with me, because you know, here's a chart that I think explains a lot of the challenges that we have in the world right now. And this is, again, not really me. This is me reaching beyond a little bit of me just talking about silly things about interior design. But, you know, we have seen productivity in the United States grow since 1973, but that has not been reflected in people's wages. And I think this has caused a bit of a haves and have-not situation that has led luxury retail like Louis Vuitton and the like to absolutely explode and take off over the last several years, and is going to probably continue to do so. It also gives space to these retailers to make people feel like this is the only option they have to be able to participate in the economy and participate in trends and do things that they want to do, right? Like, and I feel bad as a content creator. I also talk about trends and I talk about products and I talk about things, and I'm also very aware of the fact that people can't afford sometimes the things that I talk about. And so I try to keep it accessible, but that's a challenge when I know that there are people that are really genuinely struggling, and Temu is the option for them. So I don't want to necessarily say that people that shop at Temu or shop at Walmart or Target or whatever and buy all the dupes and whatever, it makes sense. And it makes sense because the incomes haven't kept up with productivity and they haven't kept up with price inflation. So they're in a position where we've created this elite group of retailers, the Restoration Hardwares that are selling ridiculous furniture at ridiculous prices, and the Temus that are selling also ridiculous items at ridiculous prices, but in the opposite direction. And really, I would just think that I would like to see retailers that thrive in the middle, because I want to see everybody thrive in the middle, and that hasn't been happening in a long time. And again, this is super me going way above my pay grade and speaking about things that are probably I'm ill-informed on, but that's just my own personal take. Temu will continue to thrive, and so will Shein, and so will all these retailers that are, again, externalizing the cost that we talked about in this video because people can't afford more. And that is a rooted problem that I think is far bigger than one retailer, and they will continue to thrive in this economy because we have made no other options for other people. And that to me is the real problem. And I'm sorry to end on that note, but that is honestly my personal opinion of why Temu is growing, why it will continue to do so. I think it does not mean that I think as individuals, we need to make a choice on what we feel comfortable with and vote with our dollars, because it really does matter. But at the same time, we also need to have empathy and compassion for others that are also trying to just figure this out as well. I'll leave it on that note. Thanks a lot. Comment, let me know what you think of Temu. See you all in the next video. Thanks, bye.